So I've spoke on the San Antonio Spurs a lot this offseason with the DeRozan trade and everything, but I don't think I've really given a prediction on the team as a whole in terms of like where I think they could rank in the Western Conference and all that. Well, when I look at the way the West is going to shake up this season, I think the Rockets are probably a little worse. I think OKC could end up being about the same just because I think people are overlooking their lack of shooting a little too much. But still, losing Carmelo Anthony is definitely a plus. I think the Jazz will get better just with Gobert being healthy. And the Lakers are definitely in the mix now too. But I think with San Antonio, you can probably look at them as just being a headache, a nuisance, whatever you will, for pretty much every team outside of Golden State. As far as an actual win total, I think high 40s, low to mid 50s is probably fair for this team. However, like I said, I don't think I've really dived into every little aspect of this team, so we can talk about it now. Losing your two best defenders, which is what Popovich did with Kawhi and Danny Green, that could be rough. Now, I know he didn't have Kawhi last season and he still managed to kind of make it work, but he did have Danny Green. And Danny Green being an awesome transition dude, solid on-ball defender, great team defender overall. And replacing that with like Marco Bellinelli, Rudy Gay, DeMar DeRozan, that is tough. And I know Pop is great, but at what point does it become a matter of like, you can't make up for what you've got on the floor, right? Like you can tell dudes to stand in certain spots, you can tell them to switch, you can tell them to do whatever, but if Bellinelli is just going to get beat in a one-on-one because that's what he does, then that could be rough. Now, I like DeJounte's defense a lot. I mean, he was, second team all defense or whatever, and I would agree with that. He was really good. But besides him, I'm looking at that overall starting five, and, it is what it is. And then you're looking at the second unit, and, Patty Mills, not expecting him to play a lot of defense. So there could be a solid 5 to 7 guys on this team who just aren't going to be that great on that side of the floor. So Pop's got his work cut out for him. The other thing to look at, if we can stay on DeJounte a little bit, is he may not be totally ready offensively to start. I made a video about this when he did take over the starting lineup for Tony Parker. The jump shot isn't there. I wouldn't even say the ability to beat dudes off the bounce is that's not totally there either. Now, he knows how to flow within that Spurs offense, and he also grabs a decent amount of offensive rebounds, and he's pretty athletic, I get it. But to act like he's going to just lead this team and make plays for guys and do all that stuff, I wouldn't go that nuts, okay? And they lost a pretty good ball handler in Manu, who, his shot-making ability, it wasn't what it was a few years back, but it was still pretty okay. They definitely ran offense through him. And now you're going to ask Patty Mills to run a little bit more offense. And, I would like him more as a spot shooter than anything else. You've got DeRozan, who... Look, there's good DeRozan and there's bad DeRozan, okay? And sure, I've already said I know that DeRozan's going to have easier sets this year where he's going to be moving off the ball a little bit more and he'll get some mismatches. That's all going to happen. But he's also going to have the times where he's walking the ball up floor himself, and Pop is going to ask him to just take on the load offensively. And we've seen that sometimes that leads to over-dribbling and taking over the offense and, pump fake, pass ball off with 7 seconds left. And when you combine that with not a whole lot of outside shooting here, that could end up being worse for this offense than we are perhaps anticipating. And then you combine that with, there's probably going to be a couple times where Aldridge or Gasol are sitting in the paint, and that's going to hurt DeRozan a little bit. Now again, you got Pop at the helm, and he knows more about his players than I do. But again, I do think this is going to be more challenging, because one thing with Kawhi, while he was injured last season, of course, is because of his ability to shoot threes, you could run off-ball stuff, and it was perhaps a little easier to where you could still have Gasol and Aldridge chilling around the rim, and then Kawhi could just shoot a three-pointer and you're in position for an offensive rebound or whatever. Whereas now with DeRozan, that three-pointer becomes a drive at the basket, and it's like, oh crap, there's actually 20 people at the rim right now. So that could be weird. Now, playing Aldridge at center will help that out, because the Spurs didn't really have like a full-time power forward last year. Rudy Gay played it sometimes, Aldridge played it sometimes, Bertans played it sometimes. So I expect a similar thing this season. But even so, just little risks here and there with this Spurs team. Should also be said, last year's Spurs team was probably the least Spursian of all of them. There wasn't like crazy ball movement all the time. It was a lot of pick and rolls and a lot of simple post-ups. Now, the spacing and the ability to get mismatches was still great and better than most teams in the league, but I'm just saying, I think we already saw Pop have to surrender a little bit to the team that he had, And then, of course, Aldridge post-ups and not a whole heap of outside shooting could lead to some double teams and all that good stuff. Now, Aldridge was also just great last season. They asked him to lead the team, and he did a pretty decent job, so I would expect him to do more of the same this time around. So, I've still been pretty positive of the Spurs, like, overall. Like, I still think that Popovich is good enough to figure it out. But, I mean, if we're honest, this roster is definitely not exactly a seamless fit with one another. I think a worse coach could make this team, like, 14th in offense and 17th in defense, whereas Pop is going to make them probably around top 10 in both, because he just knows what the hell he's doing so well. But still, I guess there's a fear that perhaps even he can't totally figure this team out, but I think ultimately he will. As for some of the young dudes, Jakob Poeltl, Lonnie Walker, I don't know. I mean, Poeltl's got to get at least to being okay on the defensive boards, and Lonnie's a rookie who likes to kind of shoot the ball. So I don't know what to expect out of those two. And yeah, I think I'm done. This roster's definitely interesting. We'll see how Pop does with it. We'll see if DeRozan goes to another level. Maybe he's just still the same guy. That's about it. If Pau Gasol can get through another NBA season, then I'm convinced that I can do anything at this point.